Hey everyone, Randy here. We're back again talking about the enhanced input plugin. Last time we kind of talked about how the input action is the baseline. You define what kind of value type this is going to actually bring in, whether it's a boolean or float. You're probably never going to see a vector of 2D or a regular vector. And then you can define triggers, which will actually allow the value, the input to pass through, and then modifier which will modify the input. But then when you want to actually assign a key, you use an input mapping context, and you select your input action that you want, and then you can define what key you want to be assigned to, and again, you can assign more triggers and modifiers in this area as well. And so what we're going to cover today is the third big piece of this, which is, if you go to the input, is the player bindable input config. Now, it's not really that complicated, but let's go ahead and create one. So the start is PMI, and I'm just going to say, I'm just going to call it default. So if you go ahead and open it up, you'll see here, you'll have a config name, config display name. Just go ahead and you're going to want that, you'll just name that to something similar to your actual name of the object. So mine's just default. I'm going to name this default as well. Metadata, that's going to be anything that you want to associate with this. I don't really have anything that I'm going to associate with that, and I doubt most people will. But what's really important here is this context. This context right here is where you can actually add your input mapping context. So like how the input action is the base, and then this is the combination of a mapping of all the input actions, like a key and a keyboard. This is like putting together all the input action mapping, or all the input mapping contexts together. And so you would use this like if you have multiple input mapping contexts that you want to assign at default, or any type of different scenarios. So instead of having to go and individually add these and remove these, you just create these input mappable config file or objects and assign what you want them to be in, and then you just add and remove those instead. So it's just trying to create things a simple way. So we'll go ahead and we'll just add actions, and we'll go ahead and add looking. So you're going to want to save it. And so now if you go to your input first person, what you could do here is you can call add player mappable config. There's message and there's regular. And if you're not certain about the difference between these, config is if you're confident, or the non-message is if you're confident that the function you're calling is actually there, where message is more of a question of, I think the function's there, but if it's not going to break your game. So like I have here, I already have one. I'll just go ahead and delete it again. So what you're going to need is, if we go up here, I'm going to move these up here, and there's a remove one as well. So this is what you usually have to do, is you have to add your actions and your looking, but instead, what we could do is, I'm just going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm going to add it up to there, and I'm going to go ahead and select our config, and then again here, you're going to put in your enhanced input local subsystem, player subsystem, and then there's options as well, so you can break them apart and see. And so the options are ignore all press keys until released, and this is really, these aren't necessary for like at the beginning of a game. They're more necessary if you're transitioning from one config to another, and maybe some of the controls don't overlay, but you can mess with that for yourself. And for now, I'm just going to leave that what the default is. Okay, so now that we've got this set up here, we're going to go back in, and now we can play, and you can see you can move around just like you could before, and everything is working awesome. So go ahead and close that and go back. And so now all this is really doing is it's simplifying this process down. Instead of having to do multiple of these, you can just do one. It doesn't really look like it's simplifying a whole lot down, because there's not a lot to simplify right here. But when you're, messing with transitions of, like, if you're flying a spaceship to now, combat, to all kinds of things, this is a really nice and simple way to help that process. and especially too if you have different controller mappings, like a southpaw and a regular, like a universal or recon, like from Halo or something like that. The configs are a really nice way to have those presets that you can just instantly throw in instead of trying to find and grab all the stuff you want. Now, the other thing with these, with the input actions and mappings is what about if you want custom controls for a player while they're in game? Well, you can do that. So now we're in my own game that I'm developing right now. And I won't show you completely the entire process, but I'll show you a little bit and give you the rough idea of how it should work. So if you go and you create like a new widget, if you don't know how to do that, I can make a video for you and show you how to create a whole new widget. But basically I have a widget here that you can push or you can select an input action key. So if you go to advanced or input key selector, and so when you click on it, it'll ask for an input and then you select it. You've seen it in many games. This is pretty much the default little thing. And so you'll see it when I actually play test it, but you're going to use that and then it'll create variables for you. So you have like the forward key and you'll want to grab an event called the on key selected. So I already created one, so mine's viewable, but you can add it and then it'll pass in the selected key or an import chord structure, which you can then break, which will have the key, and if the person selects the shift, control, alt, and command with it. And so what you want to do is you want to actually set a new variable that is going to be your custom keyboard if that's what you're doing, or your config, and then you're going to call from the input mapping context unmap action. So if you look up mapping and we go down, you can see you can map key, unmap action, unmap all, and unmap key. So unmap just unmaps a specific key, unmap unmaps everything from the context, and the unmap action just removes all the keys from a specific action within that context. And I'll kind of show a little bit more of what that's actually doing. The map key is just mapping it to an action. So what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, any key that's already assigned to the input action forward within this custom keyboard context, get rid of all of them. And now add this mapped key to it, okay? And so what we could see here, so like I have right now in this custom keyboard, these are the input actions I have right here, okay? And so if I go in and I go ahead and pause, this is what the input key selector looks like. This is a little just thing that turns it on that I made. You click it, and if you hit, let's make it E, we go forward, and I'm hitting E, and now I'm going forward. And those keys I set before, which were like W, I had W in there, it doesn't do anything anymore. So if we go back into that now, we can see all of those keys are now gone. Now, there is a downside to this, however. So let's say you create triggers and modifiers with this as well. When you actually do an unmap action, it gets rid of all of the triggers and modifiers, which kind of sucks. So there is a way around that though. So if you actually go, like when I showed before, if you go to your input action itself, you can create your own triggers and modifiers. So what you might do is create separate input actions for just the custom controls, and then specify the triggers and modifiers in there. Or if you already know the triggers and modifiers are going to be for the entire game, you can just set them in here. And then you can go into your input mapping context and then add it as normal. And then you don't have to worry about what happens when these triggers and modifiers get added or removed. And I know you're probably thinking like, well, isn't there probably a feature? Like there has to be some kind of function. And to be honest, I haven't found anything like that. So maybe there is, and I just haven't seen it. I haven't seen any documentation on it. But there is a forward note from Epic Games, is that the enhanced input action, or the enhanced input plugin, is in like beta. Like they're still working on it. So like if you hover over certain things, I don't know if I can find it, but you can see like they have notes on there that you can actually see in the descriptions of like to-do things that they still need to do. So this is not a perfect system, but I can definitely say it is a lot better than the base system, and I highly recommend it. You might have to tweak with it a little bit to get some workarounds, but the better performance and the better usability from your side for most of the actions is just absolutely necessary. It's just absolutely necessary. And so if you do start, creating a bunch of input actions and stuff, you can still call them the exact same. You just might have to call them and put them into the same functions again, but it won't be that bad. Now, when you actually create a new like you want to do custom, what you have to do, like what I have here, is I have that little check mark, and it removes all the mapping context. I'm going to add config files for it though, and adds the custom. And this is just a widget checker. So like, see, I'm messing with the configs now. But then once you do that, you're good to go. And then if you want to even like reset the custom controls, you could even do something like that, like I did here, like the unmap all, get rid of it all. And then you could just reset everything to none, or you could reset it to a default. I set it to none for now, but a default is another great option for that. And this is just right here. It's just a custom control for setting your personal sensitivity, but that's something, again, I can show later. All right, guys, that's all I have for you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.